yesterday I get phone calls from people. It's unbelievable.
Even if it's late.
No, I'm saying, but you get this is big about the story. Okay, let's go.
Bruchim aboim b'shem Hashem. Baruch shechiyanu v'kivanu azman hazeh v'nenu makom temporary stall in the shul as Hashem shebe'avalan hatzlacha v'shiri Yirgin Shiri Torah. Shem Yirgin Shiri Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone who came to the shir from Harav Zev Smith. I'd like to give a shekhet to Rabbi Alot Hashachar, sponsoring today's shir v'lishmas Oviv Rabbi Yehuda ben Yisrael Yotzai tonight Tesel. I'd like to give a shekhet to Barry Parnas, sponsoring today's Shiva Nishmas Oviv, Rabbi Zev ben Bisacha, Yotzai Yudgil Moel, Tenishmas Sam Suas B'Tzara Chaim. Let's have the great Swiss sponsoring the shir called Yirgin Shiri Torah 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Today we have the shir from Rav Smith on Birchas Hamapil, Lor HaHalacha. Rav Zev Smith.
We had an interesting shiloh where someone came home very late from a chasana and can go to sleep for a few hours, and you want to know, is there any limitation as far as saying Hamapil? Can you say Hamapil when it's early morning, after Alois? Is it in night? Is it in nets? We had a question about children that go to sleep by day. During the summer, 8:15, 8:30, do you say Hamapil by day? Can you talk after Hamapil? And as we'll see, we have probably 20 plus shilas regarding the Bracha of Hamapil. And the beauty of the sugya is that it seems to be unrelated, different questions. But really, as the Shenkin about Torah always shows us, it's really one yesod that you have to clarify. Then you have enough information to apply it lamaisa. Now I want to just be magdim before we begin. And the truth is, in the Krias Malamita that we have it, there are really three independent parts. There's the Hamapil Bracha, it's a regular Bracha. Then we have the Krishma, which is the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Daled, and Daf Hey. And then there's the Mizmayim, the Kapitach Tilm that we say out to Shmir, which is based on a Gemara in Shavuos Daf Tezvav. It's three parts, and in the past we've discussed the other parts. Today we're focusing only on Hamapil, only on the Bracha of Hamapil, but again there's more which is not for today. But really what we have to clarify, and that's going to give us enough information for the whole sugya, is a very simple question. We're Zaycha when we have Hana to make a bracha. It's a birchas hanenin. Typically, you drink a cup of soda, you make a shakel. It's a bracha on my hana. When do I make the bracha? Obviously, before I drink, not afterwards. And whenever I drink, and I drink later, I make another bracha. It doesn't lav dafka once a day. Whenever I have hana. Of course, when you make a shakel, you can't talk out until you drink. It's a hefsek. Then you have a whole group of brachas, we say 15 plus every morning, called Birchais Shevach V'Haidah, which is really the Birchas Hashachar. That is not a regular Birchas Hanenin, even though the Hana of the eyes is extraordinary. I mean, Baruch Hashem, the eyes are the greatest matana. We make a bracha b'keach ivrim, but we don't make a bracha whenever we use our eyes. And Layaleinu, a blind person, does make the bracha paikeach ivrim. What's the pshat? That's what's called a bracha on minhag shel olam. It's not me and my eyes and my hana. It's Bari Olam that provides the world with eyes. So it doesn't have to be before you have hana. And we also understand that on eyes you don't make a bracha every time you use it. It's once a day, one per customer. So Birchas Hanenin is me and my hana, and Birchas Hashachar, or you want to call it Birchas Shevach, or you want to say Minhag Shel Olam, that is once a day. And the truth is, Midina Gemara, when they put on their shoes, they made Shasli Kol Tzarki. When they got dressed, they made the Bracha B'Keach Ivrim. Our minhag is today we make it in shul whenever you're ready to daven. What's the pshat? It's not the regular Birchas Hanenin, and it's called Birchas Shevach V'Haidah. Now I'm going to ask you a very simple question, but I warn you, it's going to be negayah to 20 plus shilas. What is the nature of the bracha of Birchas Hanenin? Of a Birchas Hamapil? Is it a regular Birchas Hanenin on the Hana of sleep, which is extraordinary, it's refreshing, rejuvenating? Or is it really one of the Birchas of Shevach Vayda, the Baruch made sleep in the world? Now, as we'll see, it happens to be different than Birchas Hashachar because Hamapil said at night. But what is the nature of this unique bracha of Birchas Hamapil? So sit back and enjoy, as we'll see. We'll clarify this, the one you saw, and then we'll apply it lamaisa. There's no doubt about it. Sleep is an extremely important hana. A person is exhausted, he's run down, he wakes up refreshed, rejuvenated. There's a lot to say, but suffice what the Medrash says in Bereshis Tes Oiz Vav, Toiv Ma'oid, the pasuk says once of the Bria, Toiv Ma'oid Zeh Sheina. Sheina is Toiv Ma'oid. In fact, the Medrash, the Gemara says that sleep is good for a Shayim to keep them out of trouble. So the Medrash, you're right. But Lamaisa, sleep is good because a person sleeps a little and is Oimid V'Ageya B'Torah Harbe. There's a lot to say, but sleep in a certain sense is almost like a Tchias HaMeisim. It gives us a new, fresh day. And I want to tell you, la halacha we find in at least 2 instances that the ana of sleep is more than eating. Remember Hilchas Sukkah. You're allowed to eat achilas harai out of the sukkah, but not sheinas harai, because as the Mishnah explains, Tov Reish Lamed Tes on the Shulchan Aruch Siv Beis, because even a little sleep is refreshing. The Mishnah in Shavuos, in Tzipashin Yeridei, Reish Lamed Vav, Siv Dalid, a person could go 7 days without eating. Sleeping, he has to drink, of course, but without eating. But sleeping, he can't go 3 days. So there's no doubt about it, the hana of sleep is very big. Maybe it's a raya that Hamapil is a Birchas Nanin. Plus, if you look at the nusach of the bracha, it's all about me. Hamapil chevle shein al einai, ayev aluni rayin es chalei mezroyim, saying chalki b'soyrasecha. Typically, Birchas Hashachar is all Lashon Rabbim, except for Sha'asli Kotzarki. Pekeach Ivrim, Malbish Arumim, this is Lashon Yachid. But it can't be only a Birchas Hanenin, because we don't make a bracha every time we have hana from sleep. We don't make a bracha when we nap in the afternoon. We make a bracha once a night. Plus, look at the chasima of the Hamapil. We don't end off with sleep. What do we say? Yamei la'olam, kulei b'chvoidai. That's not really shaykh to sleeping. Also, the Magen Avraham in the beginning of Reish Tezayin asked a question. There are some hanas we don't make a bracha on. Person takes a shower, he's very fashvist, it's very refreshing, you don't make a bracha. On sweet music, you don't make a bracha. Why not? Says the Magen Avraham, quoting the Mordechai, because a bracha is only said in hana that's nichneses leguf, that enters the body. So according to the Magen Avraham, how can you make a mapel on sleep? It doesn't enter the body in a physical sense. But what's most challenging or convincing, if that's the right word, Taisus and Brachas Yud Aleph Amud Beis asks an extremely, extremely important question for our share today. Frek Taisus, since sleeping is such an integral or perhaps the main part of the mitzvah of Sukkah, why didn't Chazal require a special bracha when you sleep in the Sukkah, Lishan B'Sukkah? So Taisus in the second Torah says, you know why? Because you might not fall asleep. And if you don't fall asleep, it's a bracha levatala. So Taisus is saying a cloud. And Taisus spells it out. You can't make a bracha on sleep which is not biyadcha to fall asleep. So therefore there's no bracha lishan basukah. Now the question is, how could we even think that Hamapil is a Birchas Hanenin, or whatever it is? You can't make a bracha on sleep. So I'm going to share with you a yesod that I found in a half a dozen Gedolei Achronim, Kadmoinim, but it's really much more than that. The Birchas Avram, one of the Kadmoinim, the Prima Godim, Knesset Gedolei, and Machzah Shekel, Eli Rabbah quote him, ask our question. Since you can't make a bracha on sleep regarding Sukkah, so why do you make a bracha on Mapil? And his words are music to our ears. V'oid yeshleim, he says, שברכס המפל הוא ברכס שבח והידוע על מנהגי של עולם, כמו ברכס אשר נוסן לסחבי. שאפילו לא ישמע כל תרנגולת מברך עשה. שעל מנהגם של עולם נסכנה. Therefore, he says, even if you don't fall asleep, it's not a bracha b'atala. Ma she'en kein, the berachas leisha basukah is a berachas hamitzvah if you fall asleep. No, if you don't fall asleep, Taisus correctly says, it's a bracha l'batala. Now this is music to our ears. The berachas Avram spells out, it's a shevach v'aidah, al minhagi shel oilam, and it's comparable to a nois masech vivina. How many people here this morning heard the rooster crow? Teretz, it's minhagi shel oilam, whether you do or not. And this is clearly identifying the berachas hamapil as a berachas hashachar minhagi shel oilam. If you look at Maritz Krias on that Gemara in Brachas Yud Aleph, the same Yisoid. What I found really striking, the Knesset Gdoila on our Simon, today's Simon is Reish Lam Betes, he quotes a Seder Hayoim that writes, many people make a mistake. They make hamapil when they're ready to go to sleep, but till they fall asleep, it could be a nice few minutes, it's a hefsik. So only make hamapil when your eyelids are closing, you're about to fall asleep. Says the Knesset Gdoila, guess what? I am one of those toyim, and I do that, and the Seder Hayoim is wrong. Because you don't make a bracha when you're about to fall asleep. You make a bracha minhag shel olam. So long as you're going to sleep, you make a bracha. Just like a nois nasechvi, you don't have to have a rooster. So, and he says, beferish, don't wait till you're about to fall asleep, because you'll fall asleep before hamapil. So he's clearly saying it's a berachas minhag shel olam. The Chayodam in Lamed Hey Dalid writes, even if you don't fall asleep, it's not a bracha of Atala, because the bracha of Hamapil on minhag shel olam, that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave the world sleep, not me, but the Rebbeinu Shalom. And the truth is, as we'll see more specifically as we proceed, the Yisoid Shteitchain Rishonim, the Meiri and Brachas Daf Samach Amud Beis asks a question that really is very penetrating. When someone sleeps by day, why doesn't it make a mapel? Zok the Miri Poshit. The minhag, the bracha of a mapel is minhag shel olam. When did the Rebbeinu Shalom make sleep for? That's the Gemara in Eruvin Daf Samachei, like Ivr Lelia El Lashinsa. The minhag shel olam is sleep by night. So we have a Meiri, and we have many Gedolei Achronim. And last but not least, the B'tzeil HaChochm and Chelekei Kuf Samach Vav, he says it can't be that a mapel is only berachas hanenin, because it's not nichneses leguf, like the Magen Avraham says. And also look at the conclusion. Hamei lo'olam kuli b'chvoide. What does it have to do with sleep? So he says that it's basically both features and both objectives. Hamapil is definitely a berachas hanenin. Azah hano deserves a good bracha, but it's not only that; it's minhag shel olam. So now that we have a better understanding of Hamapil, it's really both a very significant Hana, but that would not be enough to mechayev a bracha. So we'll call it a bracha of Shevach Vaydah, minhag shel olam, like berachas hashachar, and now let's apply it l'mais. First of all, tonight, and la'arach yamim toil will be zoich to make a bracha of Hamapil. What do you have in mind? So you should have in mind a lot. First of all, thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we fall asleep, we wake up in the morning refreshed, the berachas hanenin, but it's also a bracha on the institution called sleep. But the truth is, we have to realize a lot more in that bracha. We say, and there's a bunch of tefillos that we say. We shouldn't have bad dreams. We shouldn't have a disturbed night. We daven for Torah. It's strange, you're going to sleep and you're davening for Torah. So the tzlach, they asked this kash, and he says, you're going to sleep? Did you finish Shas yet? Did you know Shulchan Aruch yet? So he said, I got to get a good night's sleep. I'll learn tomorrow. But there's another pshat, and it's a mavel de gizach. You look in the Goyin in the Mishlei, your Teschav Gimel, the Goyin says that when a person sleeps, he can be masik much more in Torah than he can masik by day. Because by day, he's part of a guf. At night, as the Shema goes upward, it's kulei ruchni. And the Goyin says a person could be masik much more by night in his sleep than by day. So maybe that's the pshat of saying, I hope I'll have a nice chelik in Torah. I just saw tshuva from the Sholem Eshiv, writes, Last night I had a cholam, my friend for the kashan has a whole shtickle tell about his cholam. Obviously people have the hasagis. In fact, I once saw, that's really the pshat, they said, Kinayim v'shochiv omer Rav l'hai shmaitza. And the Chavazor asks, how can you say about, you talk about Rav like that? You said it when you were asleep? So the pshat is, this chiddush is such a pella, is such an exquisite chiddush, he couldn't have said it by day. He had to say it at night, in his sleep. But anyhow, we're saying Chaki b'sarasecha, daven good for tomorrow. We're saying Mitasi shleim b'lefanecha, zokt Rashi in that Gemara. I should have gute kinder. No, there's never enough tefillos for gute kinder. So it's packed with tefillos. So it's really, it has three parts. There's a Bercha Shevach, a Haidah, and also Pasha, the tefillos that are there. So basically, there's a lot to have in mind, and say it with grace kavanah. But what's interesting is, if you hear someone saying the bracha of Hamapil, of how they say Amen, what kavanah do you have when you say Amen? So kayadua, Amen could have two meanings. If someone says a shevach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then what do you say? Amen means true. If someone says a tefillah, l'mashal b'nei b'rachim sh'layim Amen, it's a tefillah. What does Amen mean? Halavai, she'is kayim. Brachas, the middle brachas of Shemay Nesser, the Emtsayis, what does Amen mean? Both. It's true, the Rebbe Shem Reif HaChayle Amma Yisrael, and Halavai should be Niskayim. So it's by me as Bora, the bracha of Hamapil has both meanings. It's Tfilos, it's Shevach, so when you say Amen to Yenim's bracha, have in mind both parts, true and Halavai. Next question is a mitzvah lefars. Let's say a person is getting older, he's worried he might not fall asleep. Should he not say Hamapil? So first of all, that's not the right approach. A person that's afraid that they're not going to fall asleep and they're going to try to fall asleep, it's counterproductive. It makes it worse. You get more nervous and you start looking at the clock and it's destructive. So the emes is, we just learned the taisvis, basically a taisvis, that you don't make a bracha on sleep, but Hamapil is not a bracha on sleep. It's minhag shalayla. But I want to add, I heard this, someone heard from the Square Rebbe Zayin on two different occasions. The Rebbe said, we heard from doctors, that the main benefit of sleep, I think he said 90+% of the benefit of sleep is not the sleeping per se, it's the resting. Now what does it mean to say? A person gets into bed and he can't fall asleep, so he starts tossing and turning, looking at the clock. It's not just counterproductive, it's destructive. The best eights would be just get into bed and just relax. That's 90% of the benefit of sleep is the relaxing. So I was thinking, based on this medical fact, maybe the Hamapil can even go when you're resting without sleeping. If that's so much part, 90% of the benefit of sleep. But Lamaisa, Lahalacha, you don't have to fall asleep right away. We have Gedolei Achrayim. The El Yerabba quotes this Birchas Avram. The Pri Megadim does. The Chayodim says that. The only problem, I must be honest, the Bialocha in the beginning of our Simon Reish Lam Bates, he's worried about making a bracha you might not fall asleep. And his concern is, look at the Nusach. Hamapil Chavlei Sheina Al Einai, my eyes. So if you don't fall asleep, you're talking about your own eyes. If you don't fall asleep, how come it's not a bracha levatala? But I want to tell you, and I found the Machzor Yo in Simon Gimel, Sif Katan Yud Aleph says, the Bialoch is a Das Yochid. I mean, we all see the Bialoch, we get all nervous. But he's a Das Yochid. It's connected El Yerabba, Chayodim, Pri Megadim, Gra, or Chashulchan. But Lamais, the Bialoch has a good kasha. Either Bracha Hamapil is Lashon Yochid, but it really means to ask a very strong question. If, let's say, someone, Shavuos morning, did not sleep a whole night, does he make the Bracha Mavashein Me'enai in the morning? We don't. We all know that Birchas Hashachar, even if you don't have the Anah, you didn't hear the Tarnagol, a blind person makes the Bracha. Why is a Mavashein different? Teretz is Pashit. Because a Mavashein is Lashon Yochid. Not Paikeach Ivrim Rabim, Lashon Yochid. If my eyes were not asleep, I can't say in the morning, thank you for opening my eyes. It's a lie. When the Lashon Yochid, then you can't make the bracha. We didn't have Anah. So the Bialoch is asking, so how can you say Hamapil? But the Beis Baruch, on the Chayodim, this is a very partial teretz. If I'm making a bracha on the past, the person opened my eyes, and you didn't sleep, so it's a lie. Can't say that. Hamapil Chavlei Sheina is on the future. So if I'm not sleeping in the next 15 minutes, I'll sleep in an hour from now. So it's not a lie. So although the Bialach is concerned, but the minhag Yisrael is like the Roiv HaPoiskim, the Bracha is said on minhag shel oilam. So basically, for those that have a problem falling asleep, don't worry. Say Hamapil like regular, get into bed, relax, think about a Shvera Toisvis, and before long, you will be asleep. But even if not, it's not a Bracha L'Vatola. Now, and the Paiskim were very concerned about losing a Hamapil. They quote, the Bechaim said, better to go to sleep 10 times and not fall asleep than go to sleep once without a Hamapil and fall asleep. It's a very heilige Bracha with a lot of meaning, al pi halach, al pi soid, al pi kabbalah. So let's not give up this precious bracha. I'll ask you a question that maybe till today you didn't think was a problem, but it's a big issue. Let's say Shavuos night, when we go to learn, and we're not going to go to sleep that night. Do we make a bracha of Hamapil? See, wondering what's the shaila? But it's a very good shaila. If we just prove that the Hamapil is minhag shel oilam, just like we say the bracha of Pekei Chivrim, even though he's blind, why should you say Hamapil every night, once a night? Okay, the logistics is very, interesting. You go to learn, you're sitting next to Chavrusa. Excuse me, I have to say Hamapil first. He's going to think, you're planning on going to sleep. But the truth is, why not? So the emes, the kasha is a good kasha. In Alicha Shloim, I found Shloim Zalman, Yud Gimel, Chav Gimel. He just says, but if you're not going to go to sleep, you don't make Hamapil. Why taka not? Oh, we know why not. Because if the nusach of the brach is a lashon yachid, and you're not planning on sleeping a whole night, then you don't make that bracha. If you make a bracha now, hopefully you sleep within an hour or two. So in the osid, you're going to fall asleep. But if you're not going to sleep at all tonight, it's different than any other Berchas HaShachar. It's more like Hama V'Sheina. If you're not planning on going to sleep the whole night, we don't say the Hamapil. Now, the only question I must be honest is the bracha she'asa li kol tzarki, it's lashon yachid, and yet we make the bracha on Tisha B'av or Yom Kippur, although we're not wearing shoes. So the emphasis there, Arizal and the Goyin did not make the bracha Tisha B'av or Yom Kippur, but the minhag Yisrael to make the bracha, and the Belt says because it's basically on other tzarachim also, and also we have our Tisha B'av shoes, whatever they might be, but basically she'asa li kol tzarki is the exception. Hamapil chevli, we only say if you're going to sleep that night, just like Hama V'Sheina, we don't say if we didn't sleep that night. The Bircha, the Pri Asad in Chelik Beis, Amar Aleph says this Yisoid, if you're not going to sleep a whole night, you don't say Hamapil. Now, the truth is that this bracha, again, has a little of each. But I'll tell you an interesting halacha l'maisa that brings out the point. We look forward to Sukkot Haba Aleinu L'Toiva, and a person goes to sleep in the Sukkah the first night of Sukkot. Does he make Hamapil? Avada. Should he make a bracha Lishan Basukah? No. I'm a Manashach, so that we have Taisis. Because Lishan Basukah is you might not fall asleep, and that's a bracha Vatola. But Hamapil cannot become a problem. Now, the emphasis to sleeping in New York City, we know exactly what Taisis meant. There's noise, there's cats, there's squirrels, there's garbage man, there's honking. Until you fall asleep, it's a ganze gedilla. But I always say the good news is that if you don't fall asleep, so you mekayim the mitzvah l'chol hadayis. Once you fall asleep, so it's very shaila if you still have the mitzvah as you sleep. So the nechama is if you don't fall asleep, you have a mitzvah. You fall asleep, oichid good. So you get into bed, Hamapil, and hopefully you'll fall asleep. Ma'isa shahaya, someone said Hamapil, went to sleep, fell asleep, but woke up with a terrible stomach ache. He was up for an hour or two. Close to 2 hours actually, but he wants to go back to sleep now because there's a few hours till the morning. Does he make a second Hamapil because there was a hefsek between the first Hamapil and the second sleep? So I told him you're 100% right. It's definitely a hefsek, but Hamapil at the end of the day is a berchas shevach, once a night. I wouldn't say once a day, once a night. So that's clear. I saw the berchas habayis, lamanal lebeis, because the shulchan chavzai and tes both say. This is a unique feature of Hamapil as a Birchas Shevach is only once a night. Now, the question is, some will say a second Krishma, because Krishma is Shmira. So you want a new Shmira. Chaim may ask it's not necessary, one Krishma is enough. But then I could hear Krishma, you would say again, but not Hamapil. Ma'isa Shahaya, a person fell asleep on his couch for 2 hours at night, woke up, and then went to sleep. Does he make Hamapil now? because you already slept without Hamapil. But that's not a shayla. Like, why not? So, Hamapil and go to sleep. I'll ask you an interesting question that has many nafkaminas. A person that goes to sleep, a full sleep by day. Lamashal Shavuos morning, whether you daven, vasikin or not, we go to sleep either 4:30 or 7:30, and you go to sleep for a nice few hours. That's your night sleep. Do you make a Hamapil when you sleep by day? Someone works the night shift, sleeps by day. In England, many people, England during the summer, the Alois is a little after Chatzos. Do you say Hamapil after Alois? A child goes to sleep 8:30 during the summer. That's miboy joim. Do you make a Hamapil? The common denominator is a full shena by day. Does that require a bracha? So the truth is, in Gemara, in Shulchan Aruch, there's no mention of going to sleep at night. And I know why. If we hold that it's a berchas hanenin, so why is day different than night? But maybe if you hold that it's a berchas shevach vayda, on minhag shel olam, when did the Rebbe create sleep for? Like ivra leil el l'shinsa. Bakeret, the Mishnah says another sleep by day is destructive. So maybe we'll say the minhag shel olam is night. I work and I sleep by day. Like plug. Sorry, the minhag shel olam is only by day, by night. And the truth is, the Meiri already said that Bekitza. The Chayadim Alamed Hey Dalit spells it out because sleeping by day is wrong. Don't make a bracha on a wrong activity. Now, God, if a person has a night shift, it's not wrong, but derech klal, it's only by night. But I must say it's not so pashut. The true Ashai in Siman Pei Beis has this question. And he basically says, if this is his night sleep, quote unquote, but he worked at night or he learned at night, it's not an avla to go to sleep. A person learned the whole Shavuos night. It's not bittul Torah to go to sleep at 4:30 or 7:30. So it's not an avla. And he says, v'tzorachin. I'm not sure if maybe you have to make Hamapil. The Karen Ladava, there was a Rav in Satmar, Simon Samach. He also points out the Lashon of the Gemara and the Rishonim, no one mentions night. The only Rishon that says the word Laila is the Rambam. So he tries to figure out, is it taka din in Laila? He says, if you go to sleep at night and you don't fall asleep, that's minhag shel olam, very good. But he says, but Lamais, if you go to sleep by day and this is your sleep, it's a full night's sleep. But he does add the fact that Gemara puts Krishma together with Hamapil, Krishma and the Mizmoirim, the Shmir is only by night. By day is not a dangerous time. So he says that the Rambam says Laila. The Gemara does not mention Laila. And he says one thing is for sure. If you go to sleep after Alot Hashachar, you don't say Hamapil. But his maskana is, if you go to sleep after Alot, I would advise say B'loy Shem HaMalchus or B'mahara the Hamapil B'leiv. So again, we see this hesitancy to go to sleep, a full night's sleep by day, maybe a bracha should be said. But I saw the Pri Asada that I mentioned, he says you need both. It has to be a night's sleep, but not by day, because that's not what the minhag shel olam is. And the B'tzeil HaChachma that I mentioned earlier is emphatic about it. The question was someone that has a night shift and sleeps by day, and he says the Rubam HaMachriya, that it's a full-fledged berchas hashachar that's said at night, but by day is not minhag shel olam. And he says, befrat, that we notice that it's not nechneses lahaguf, can't be a berchas hanenin. So I think the truth is, even though we did see some tzarachian, but the minhag Yisrael has become that we make Hamapil only at night and not by day, even if that's his night sleep, like a night shift person or after a Leil Shavuos of learning. Now, what I did see, the same thing, and this is a much bigger chiddush, but I must be honest, but that's what's pashit. The Halacha discusses this, and so does the Kiriat, so does the B'tzeil HaChachma. Let's say a person has a night shift. So he goes to sleep shkia time, wakes up 1 o'clock, and goes to work. So he wants to make Hamapil by day, 8:30, it's still shki, it's still day, but the bulk of the sleep is at night. Does that justify the Hamapil? So Zakti B'Tzeila Chachma, absolutely not. When is the bracha being said? Now is not the time for Hamapil. Minhag Shalom is at night. And he brings two beautiful rayas. The Bekur Yankiv and Tafresh Lambates Sivkat and Chav Beis writes, if someone makes Kiddush, you're not supposed to do this, but he makes Kiddush Miba'oi Jaim on Sukkis and makes a Leisha Basukah, you can't wait till it gets night and use the same Leisha Basukah. Because the Leisha that said Miba'oi Jaim is Levatola. It's discounted. Make another Leisha Balayla. And he brings a Gilyam Asha in Yeredeya, you attest that a person makes Achilas Matzah Miba'oi Jaim and waits till night to eat the matzah, the bracha wasn't chal by day. So it seems very literal. You have to make the bracha at night for a night's sleep. To make it night, make by shkia going into the night is not a good idea. Wait until tzeis or bein hashmashas, maybe you could say it's a suffix, even though a suffix fakir, don't make it. But no doubt about it, the night shift, a person that's sleeping Shavuos morning, a bracha is not said. What's considered night or day regarding Hamapil? Is it alois? Is it netzachama? So the Bialocha points to a Gemara in Brachas Daf Tes that a person was very delayed in davening Ma'ariv and now already it's after alois. He can't make the bracha hashkivenu because after alois is man kima, waking up, not going to sleep. So he basically says the cutoff point is alois. No Hamapil after alois. Today there's an early alois, you have to keep that in mind. But no doubt about it, if someone, Shavuos morning, typically we don't say Hamapil. Now someone asks, I'm going to run home a half hour before alois and get into bed, hope I'll fall asleep. But the truth is the minhag is to learn the whole night while you're running home. You get home, you pater, no chiyuv. A person has an early morning flight and he gets to sleep, so you have to look at the clock. Is it still before alois? Now this is pashut. Whether it's an early morning flight or a very late chasana, let's say he knows it's a half hour to alois. He wants to make Hamapil. He probably will fall asleep within the next few minutes. He'll sleep 10 minutes before alois and the bulk of the sleep the next morning. That by me is pashut. Avadi makes a Hamapil. Why? He made the Hamapil in the right time at night, and there is a few minutes of sleep by night. The bulk of the sleep is by day. But that we saw earlier. Sheinas Aroi is Machayev Sukkah, is a full-fledged Hana. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah and Tafresh Lambates on the Shulchan Aruch Siv Beis that you have to be Chayev to sleep in the Sukkah, even Arai, he says, because sometimes even a little sleep is very satisfying. So it comes out of an interesting thing. To make the bracha half hour before alois and you'll sleep a few minutes is perfect. To make the bracha 8:30 p.m. and the bulk of the sleep is at night is wrong. Why? It's totally when you make the bracha, and if you have at least a little sleep, that the bracha is chal on. So basically, this is halacha lamaisa that a little bit sleep is enough. In fact, I saw in the Sefer Doilu Mashket, page Kuf Mem Aleph, two psakim of Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zechariah Levracha. Someone asked me if he made a Hamapil, and then he realized he didn't bench, or he made a Hamapil and he forgot to say Sphira. So Reb Chaim writes, sleep a little bit, and then say Hamapil, and then say benching or Sphira, and then go back to sleep. Now that's typical of Reb Chaim. He was so cool a Torah. He had his body was like a computer, like a robot. Sleep a little bit, wake up, and say Krishma, say Sphira, whatever it is. Now I don't think we could do that so easily. But the point of his psakim were that if you make Hamapil and you sleep a little bit, the bracha is chal. There's no problem of hefsek. So if the bracha is chal lagabi that, it's chal lagabi the actual bracha. Now this is pashit that a person that wants to stay up leil shishi, and now during the winter, let's say, and he takes a nap from 6:30 till 8:30, and then he stays up a whole night. Does he make a Hamapil on that 6:30 sleep? The answer is no, because that's not his night sleep. Now, if he's going to go to sleep sometime during the night, even at the end of the night, and that's his night sleep, then you make Hamapil. But if you tell me he's sleeping just as a nap, that's a Sheinas Aroi, even if it's an hour or two, and Hamapil said on a person's night sleep, not nap. So if this is a nap, it doesn't require Birchas Hamapil. Now, there was some Gedolim, Rabbi Yashua Mashal, slept from, I think, 11:30 till 2:30. Father, that's Chayv and Hamapil. That was his night's sleep. It was a very short sleep, but that was his night's sleep. But someone that has a nap, and then later he'll sleep for the night, you wait for the Hamapil for the actual full-fledged sleep. The question that I saw, Chiddush that I saw, and this I saw Rav Sternbach in the Chuvas Chelik Aleph Kuf Tzadik Ches, he says in England, Alois is very close to Chatzos, and I guess many people go to sleep at that time of the evening. Does that mean that no one can say Hamapil? So he says a Chiddush. Since in England and the whole Medina, the Zman Sheina, the minhag shel Olam is after Chatzos Be'erach Ayetz Alois, but Lamais it's the Zman Sheina, and that's when people sleep. So it's not pshat like a Yochid that wants to make Hamapil by day. That's loy plug. The night shift person can't make Hamapil. But this is the minhag shel Olam. The entire country has a very early Alois. So if that's the time that people go to sleep, that's Man Shchiva, you could say Hamapil even though it technically is after or close to Chatzos. I'll give you another beautiful nafkamina. The Torah in Siman Mem Vav enumerates the Meya Brachas we say every day. And it's Kedua, most Paiskim hold the Meya Brachas go Mei Erev ad Erev. Not from morning to night, night to night. The first bracha that the Torah counts, as the Rambam does, is the bracha of Hamapil. Now, the obvious question is, if you're counting Erev ad Erev, what happened to Ma'ariv? Shema Nesra, Birchas Krishma. So the Welt says, which is probably true, and I think the Machzor Shekel says it, because in those days, like Rashi and Tais, in the beginning of brachas pointed out, they used to have an early Ma'ariv. So if you have an early Ma'ariv, it's Miboy Joim, so you don't count it to the Meya Brachas. So my question was, okay, if they have an early Ma'ariv, they probably went to sleep also early. So how do you count Hamapil? There it's very poshut. If Taka they went to sleep Taka before night, they didn't say Hamapil. Because you don't make Hamapil by day. So if they did say Hamapil, it must have been at night. Memela, it's poshut that even though you can't count Ma'ariv because it's Miboy Joim, but Hamapil that was said at night is counted as the first of the Meya Brachas. I want to share with you an aura. I'd love to hear from the Olam, but I think this is negate to many of our families. Assume a cotton shegiel lechinuch, that age, goes to sleep during the summer at a reasonable hour. I'm talking about disciplined children. Don't run around the whole night. Let's talk about a 10-year-old child, a 9-year-old, 8-year-old child who goes to sleep 8:15 during the summer. Should he make the Hamapil before he goes to sleep? So the truth is, 8:15 is Vadim and Boy Join, even 8:30 if Shki is 8:35. So how could you make him say Hamapil? It's wrong. We don't make his Hamapil by day. The majority, the whole sleep is at night, but you're making a bracha by day. That's wrong. But you have to mechanech him to go to sleep like a yid. True. But you can't mechanech him to make a wrong chinuch. And if it's wrong to make a Hamapil by day, why is he getting a wrong chinuch? You know what this reminds me of? We just had Tishbav Shechal B'Matzoi Shabbos. So us adults, we made Havdalah Sunday night. Let's say a child that has to eat. When does he make Havdalah? L'chayr Matzoi Shabbos, but the minhag's not like that. He makes Sunday night. Let him make Havdalah as chinuch. Teretz is the chinuch do things right, not wrong. The minhag is to make Havdalah Sunday night, and you are following the minhag. So the chayr, at least it comes out to my understanding, that a child that goes to sleep miboy joim, whatever miboy joim is, until it's laila, even though the bulk of the sleep is at night, should not make Hamapil. So I asked one Rav, he says, which child goes to sleep before nightfall? Okay, so he's conceding defeat. Okay, so but if you have a child, especially in England where it's really late, if the child's going to sleep before night, should not say Hamapil like an adult, like the right halacha should be done. If you know anything different, please tell me. I want to add also, could be that there's no chinuch in regarding Hamapil, because Rashi's Shita, our famous Rashi's Chiddush, that there's no chi of chinuch and krishma, because it's too early in the morning or too late at night, and a child can't do it. So if Hamapil's only at night, maybe it's not shaykh for a child. But the chayra before nightfall, a child should not say Hamapil. There is a minhag some have that after Chatzois, if they go to be after Chatzois, they don't say Hamapil. At first glance, this is a Chiddush, Gadol, because Zil Basa Timer, what does have to do with Chatzois? If the reason is Nanin, so anytime. The reason is minhag Shalaylam, the minhag Oilam is it goes to be after Chatzois. And the emes is there's no mention in Gemara Shulchan Aruch of Chatzois. And the third, a pretty good raya, is the famous halacha in Taf Pei Aleph, Siv Beis. Shulchan Aruch says on Leilei Pesach, we don't say the entire Krishma, only the first parsha. So up the Mishnah quoting Achrayim, we all say Hamapil. In other words, the Krishma at Pesach night is just Hamapil and the first parsha. How many people in their lifetime went to sleep before Chatzois on Pesach night? How about we make the Afikoyim by Chatzois? No one goes to sleep before. So it has to be that Chatzois is not the cutoff point. But the emes says the makor of this minhag is al pi Kabbalah. But even the Mekubalim are divided if that's the correct minhag. The Birkei Yosef, in the beginning of our Simon, quotes the Shari Tshuva. The Shari Tshuva quotes the Birkei Yosef, but both of them say this, that al pi Kabbalah, not to say after Chatzois, the Birkei Yosef, who was a Mekubal, ein ha-emes kain, it's not true. But the Maisa, the Rav Pa'olim, in Chelik Aleph, Soy Yisharim Yudalid, the Kafachayim, and Sivka and Ches, that's the minhag of Mekubal Mishalayim, that they only say Hamapil if you go to sleep before Chatzois. So if you're a Mekubal and that's your minhag, gesund to hate, unless that's your minhag. But basically, there's no difference before Chatzois and after Chatzois. Now, the challenging question is, some have a minhag, they never say Hamapil. Some Hasidim, I heard Ger, Bob, Bells, Brisk, that's what I heard, maybe more. Now, Pashtus is hard to accept. How do you ignore Din HaGemara and Shulchan Aruch that less man the chaylik? So some say, maybe they're afraid they might not fall asleep, but the chayish would be halacha. Maybe they're afraid they have to talk out, which will soon see is not a problem. I think the real justification is, if that's your minhag, that's your minhag, so you follow your minhag. But for the rest of us, again, as the Divrei Chaim was quoted as saying, a person should never go to sleep without Hamapil. It's both lahalacha, al pi Kabbalah, al pi soid, a very important bracha. Unless that's your minhag, so then you follow your minhag. I'll share with you a fascinating question to get to practically half of Klal Yisrael. Do women say the bracha of Hamapil? So this is another beautiful nafkamin of our original question. Because if it's a berchas hanenin, why women potter? But since, as we just proved, the bracha is a zman grama by definition, only at night, not by day, maybe we'll say it's a zman grama nashma potter. And that is exactly what the Magen Avram suggests in Reish Lamed Tes Yif Katan Beis. He seems to be aware of the minhag women did not make Hamapil. Why not? Efsha, they hold it's a regular mitzvah shezman grama. Now this is a big plea, because first of all, zman grama is a limitation in mitzvahs, not in brachas. Va'oid, berchas hashachar nashim achayevin, even though it's only said by day, the bracha is not limited to zman grama. And perhaps most importantly, look at the tefillahs that go into the Hamapil. Don't women need that? They also want to have good kinder, a restful sleep. They shouldn't have bad dreams, disturbing dreams. So the Al Rabbah in Sifkat and Dalit quotes the Magen Avram, and he writes, "Ve'ein nachain da'atu gavru boi shmira nashiloi." In other words, women need the benefit of Hamapil. And this is quoted by the Pri Megadim, Sharatzian, Aruch HaShulchan, Kafachayim. In fact, I saw the Marzal Yo points out that Avada Neshei Ashkenaz should make Hamapil. The only question is Neshei Svarad, who typically don't make a bracha on Shofar Lulav Sukkah because they ain't a mitzvah v'oisa. So maybe like the Magen Avram, they can't make a bracha, they ain't a mitzvah v'oisa. Says the Marzal Yo very correctly, that's a toyis. Why don't Neshei Svarad make the bracha when they're potter? It's based on Beinu Tam Shita. You can't say B'tzivanu if they're not mechuyev. But there's no B'tzivanu on Hamapil. So let's be clear, and Taka the Kafachayim writes this, that Nashim, Ashkenazim, and Svardim should in fact say the Hamapil. The Rav Sternbuch and that Tshuva Alkuf Tamaches quotes from Meir Pamishlana, it's a school not to have a Chasham Hapala of an Uba. So people like to hear the word skula, so it's a skula also, but you don't have to come on to skulas. It's basically Birchas Hamapil Lahenes Nitna. There's so much to it. Women, like men, should say it. Again, the tefillah of Mitasi Shleima, very precious. Tefillah, nightly tefillah, to have good to kinder. So that's something we shouldn't give up. People travel at night. For example, they are on a plane throughout the night, or on a bus, or in a car. I don't mean the driver, obviously, but they're sitting in the back, and it's a whole night trip. They might as well get a night's sleep. Should and when do they say Hamapil? So this is clear that we're talking about a night's sleep. But they're not in their pajamas, and the Shema Begodim with their slufkapel, and they're sitting up, they might not fall asleep. So I think the answer is very pashut. Zil basa taima. If this is your night's sleep, this or nothing, you're in a plane, and a bus, and a car, there's no bed, so try to make the best of it. Try to sleep for a few minutes, an hour, two, maybe even a few hours. If this is your plan for the night, this or nothing, the fact that you're not in pajamas, you're not in a bed, makes no difference. I mean, the Gemara does say, "Hanichlis lishan al mitasai," that's because of ha'iva. But if you're trying to have your night's sleep, then say Hamapil. And like we saw almost all poskim say, even if you don't fall asleep, it's not a bracha levatala. And relax. Remember what the Rebbe said: 90% of the benefit of sleep is the relaxation. You'll probably sleep for many hours. The problem is you get nervous and all wound up, and you're looking at the clock. Just relax, get a good night's sleep, and Shalom Yisrael. Now, if you're about to land, then you might not fall asleep, and you probably won't fall asleep, so that's something different. But the main point is, is this your intended night's sleep? Even a few minutes. Again, we said earlier, even a few minutes justifies the Hamapil, because a few minutes of sleep is very precious. So if that's your night's sleep, and that's what you're planning on, avada, you could make the bracha. I would caution, when you're flying by plane, you have to know your location at that moment. And your clock, it might be 3:30, but you might be flying in a place that is Vada Yoim. So then Vada Yoim, you don't make Hamapil. So it's a little tricky to make sure you know your location, and then you can make the bracha. We had a Shaila which warmed my heart, one of the Brachim. He wanted to make Hamapil in Besmedrash. I'm talking a yeshiva dorm. He said, why not in your dorm room? He might wake up one of his roommates. Very nice. I didn't ask him if he's going to go into Beis Medrash with his pajamas. That's not my business. But he wanted to know, can I make a bracha in Beis Medrash? And it's a pretty nice mahalach to get to his dorm room. Different building, in fact. We've been upstairs, a different floor. So I liked it that he was thinking. But the question is there a halach of shini makom, which typically the Gemara says in bracha, shini makom tzarech levarach, meaning it needs a new bracha. You make a bracha in Beis Medrash, you go sleep in your dorm, a different building, or even a different floor. So this is another beautiful nafkamin of our original Shaila. Had it only been a Berchas Hanenin, then you have to reconsider. Maybe it's a problem. You don't make a shackle here and drink the coffee across the street. But since it's a Berchas minhag shel olam, we don't make a bracha malbish harumim and Beis Medrash. When you get dressed at home, shinu makom. A Berchas minhag shel olam is once a day, an appropriate time. So I looked into this because it was very, very encouraging to me. You see, people are thinking. I saw some have a suffix, it is shini makom, which to me is a pliya. The Rav Shlomo Zalman in Halicha Shlomo Yud Gimel Chav Daled has this shaila. If bracha wants to make the bracha in Beis Medrash, I'm not sure why. In that case, maybe he wants to have more kavanah. But he says you have no problem. He doesn't explain, but Rav Sternbuch in that tshuva and the Tzitz Eliezer in Zayin Chav Zayin Sifkot and Ches spells out there's no din of shini makom regarding Hamapil. For that you could rely that it's minhag shel olam, and that's good enough. Now I must mention the Mekar Chayim, the Chavas Yor, in the Seif on our Siman, likreis b'cheda mishkav odif. The bedroom is the right place. And the truth is, that's Lashon Gemara. Hanichnas lishan al mitasai mevarech. That means you go into the bedroom, then you make the bracha. But it's not ma'akiv. I think what's ma'akiv is most important. The Meiri and Brachas Daf Daled, when he speaks about Krishma, like el shekarin oisei derech hadyotis v'gila roish ela be'ema uveyira. It should say with a tremendous devotion. I very fondly recall my dormitory years, and I was in yeshiva. So there was a whole kvutza bachim that set a mapel in their pajamas. That's the right thing. But put on their hats, reklach, and gartel. Made a very beautiful roishim. A mapel, again, you're going to look at halacha, and al-pi kabbalah, al-pi soid. A very important part of a person's night. So I'm not saying you have to wear your hat or gartel, but you should be saying it with the right kavanah upon it. Pajamas not a stira, obviously, but half asleep or falling asleep. Say it with a geschmack, and if you feel that you'll say it better in Beis Medrash, or a married person, to come into room and wake up his wife, he's not saying it off a coil. So a bissel seichel darf man haben, Say it in the best place, conducive for kavanah, like the Meiri says, be'emu v'yira, and that's really the objective of how to say it. Now, what position should Hamapil be said, standing or sitting? So believe it or not, there's another simple nafkamina. Because typically, Birchas Hanenin could and probably should be said sitting, because you have more Yishuv Adas. Taisus and Brachas, and Alf Mabei says you're supposed to bench sitting, because there's more kavanah when you're sitting, you're more Yishuv Adas. So you make a bracha, a yid sits when he eats and drinks, make a bracha, you're sitting. But Birchas Shevach Vaidah, like most Paiskim, should be said standing. I think the minhag is we stand by the Berachas Hashachar that we say, especially the 15 brachas. So here, the question is, how do you identify Hamapil? So I saw the El Yerabba in Sifkat and Gimel quotes a Tashbitz Kat, one of the Rishonim, Oim Hamapil Ba'amida. I understood why. Because since primarily it's a Berachas Hashachar type of bracha, it said Ba'amida. But Dr. El Yerabba, Rishonim Ba'achroinim Lahis Kira Izeh. I don't agree. It's not mentioned. What's the pshat? So I was thinking, Ken Zayin, just like we know Berachas HaMitzvahs, we say standing. Lulav, Shaifa, Kiddush Kavanah, Sfira. But when we make the bracha al Chilas Matzah or Leisha Basukah, we sit down. Berachas HaMitzvah. So the real klal is a Berachas HaMitzvah of the mitzvah that's done standing, you make the bracha standing. But a mitzvah that's done sitting, like Chilas Matzah, so sit. So could be, even if it's a Berachas Shevach Vaidah, but since the mitzvah, whatever it is, the activity of sleeping is laying down, so it's not a stira to be sitting. So I think the psak will be, like I said earlier, the ikki is to say it with kavanah. Some people have more kavanah sitting, sit, standing. It's not ma'akiv, standing versus sitting. The ikki is say the bracha with the right kavanah. I'll tell you another interesting nafkamina. You see how weit this goes. Did you ever wonder the bracha lakai neshama shenasata we say in the morning? There's no psicha. You just start out in the middle of nowhere. So there is a sheet of the Ravid. They're trying to quote the Ravid. The Ravid says that there's no psicha to lakai neshama because it's a bracha smucha lechaverta. Which bracha? Get ready for this one. Not the first two brachas. The bracha of Hamapil. Now that's a fascinating chiddush. You say Hamapil at night, you sleep, however long you sleep, and the kain neshama is part 2 of Hamapil. It sounds like bizarre, but it's not. Because Hamapil is on the hana or the benefit of sleep. The bracha of the kain neshama, hamachzin neshamas of gara meis. I don't want to touch that, but at night, a person from a gaver becomes a chefza, a stikkel of mace. Hamachzin neshamas of gara meis. And the sleep is not a hefzik, because that's all about sleep. So you make a bracha on the sleep, you sleep, and you wake up, you thank Hashem you're still alive. So it's not so outlandish to understand that it's one long hemshech. But the problem is, many people say Natil Shadayim, Ashiyatze, and then Alakai Neshama. So it's not smucha to Hamapil. So that smucha would be to Ashiyatze. So then you look in Taisus and Brachas Yudal, the Torah and Simon Vav also says this. They also ask why Alakai Neshama is not a psicha, and they say it doesn't have to be a psicha. Birchas Haidot doesn't necessarily need a psicha. But just the thought of it, that Hamapil and Alakai Neshama is really one bracha, is very understandable lefi dvareinu. Are there any nights that we don't say Hamapil? So the truth is, zil basataima. Why should a yid go to sleep any night of the year without Hamapil? It's not reasonable. What's wrong with Hamapil? But we seem to recall Pesach night is something different. But look again. Taf Pei Aleph Si Beis, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Ramah says, you don't say the psuke of Mizmorim on Pesach by night, because the Mizmorim of Yosh B'Seisa are Shmira, and Pesach is a Leil Shimurim. Is mashma? No Hamapil. But it's not true. Zakta Mishtabura, but you do say Hamapil. And the reasoning is Pashit. What does Leil Shmur have to do with Hamapil? Hamapil is a bracha on minhag shel olam, on nenin. But basically, Hamapil is said every night of the year. I should mention the Kaf HaChaim, Sifkot and Yudalid, Al Pi Arizal, that Hamapil is not said Pesach by night. I don't know if anybody has that minhag, but at least the Mishnah Berurah quoting Achroinim that Hamapil is said even Pesach by night. Someone asked me last year, it was interesting, I never thought of it. Tisha B'Av, do we say the full Krishma? So Hamapil, there's no doubt about it. There's no shaila. Why do you have to say Hamapil? But the psukim of Torah as a shmira, maybe we try to trim Limud Torah on Tisha B'Av. Maybe we shouldn't say it. But the way I found out, most poskim say that it's part of the nusach. We daven and we say Krishma, we say Tilim, if it's part of Tefillah. So to my knowledge, Krishma on Tisha B'Av is the same. Taka some make it less. But the chiddush to me was le'alechem should not be negeya, but the Shleim Zalman and Mincha Shleima Aleph Tzadik Aleph, he feels that even an oinen lo yaleinu, who's potter from all mitzvahs and all brachas and benching and davening, should say Hamapil. But his cheshbon is, I think what he means, he says it very briefly, but I think it means to say is, you're going to sleep, you're about to go to sleep, so you're not busy with the mace, obviously, right? You're not going to dream about the mace. So the reason the pattern and oinen don't apply to Krishma and Hamapil. The big chiddush. But I was thinking also, the fact that it does protect us from sakana, that alone is a reason to say Hamapil. We don't have bad dreams, we don't have hiruim royim, and the whole Krishma is a shmira. In fact, what I think is pashit, an oinen on the way to Kfura, very busy with Kfura, doesn't daven and doesn't say brachas, but he does say Tfilas Haderech. Because Otu oinen loy boy shmira. I even saw a bigger chiddush. Kaf HaChaim says an oinen will eat, will not make a moitzi, will not make benching, but he has to wash mayim rechayim. Mayim rechayim, not benching. There's a shmira. You don't want to have melech sedaimis. So maybe we'll group Krishma and Hamapil with sakana and yonim sides. But the Maisa, I did look into the Paiskim. All of them quote this chiddush of Shleim Zalman, the Heintige Paiskim. The only exception, the Badi HaShulchan, feels that we don't find that an oinen is chayav. He feels that potter. But I think the minhag has become that an oinen does say the full Krishma. But last but not least, a beautiful group of questions is if a person that said Hamapil, and it's at night, and there's no sveikas, but for some reason he has to talk after Hamapil. Now by me, this is one of the soides habriya. There's always what to do after Hamapil. He forgot to make benching, he forgot to say sphira, he forgot to tell his parents where he left the keys to the car. A whole bunch of needs punked after Hamapil. But that's the way it is. So Lamaisa, is there an issa of hefsek between Hamapil and actually falling asleep? So this is a beautiful zil basa taima. If it would only be a bechas hanenin, you can't make a shackle and talk out. You can't make a mapil and not go to sleep. But since we said it can't be because it's not up to you to fall asleep, it's also a bechas hashachar. There's no din of hefsek by pekeach ivrim or matir asurim or zaykef kefufim. But what seems to be challenging, l'chayra, and I quote l'chayra, the Ramah in Reish Lam B'Tes Sif Aleph, Yikra Krishna Samach Mitasei ve'ein oichlin v'shoisin v'lei medabrim acher Krias Shema shalamita, but go to sleep right away. Shenema, this is based on a kolboy, one of the Rishonim, Imru bilvavchem al mishkavchem v'dai musela. Nach Krishna, go right to sleep. So you see the Ferish Ramah, you can't talk out. But learn again, you see you made a mistake. This is based on a kolboy. He's not talking about Hamapil. What's he talking about? Krias Shema. The kolboy says since the reason to say Krias Shema is to go to sleep mitoich divrei Torah, imru b'lvavchem al mishkavchem v'dai musela, you can't talk out else the Krias Shema shaboy, else the hefsek between shmira and sleeping. But is mashma, else the Hamapil, there's no problem of hefsek. In fact, the Machzor Yo in Simon Gimel Sivkot and Yud, from this alone, that there's no Issa Hefsek by Hamapil, is the biggest raya. It's not a bracha of Nen, and it's minhag shel olam. Clear. And Taka, the truth is, there's a lot. I found a whole list of points I'm not going to tell now, but if you want to see, the Tzitz Eliezer in Zayin Chav Zayin quotes a slew of poiskim that there's no Issa Hefsek after Hamapil. There's more of Issa Hefsek after Krias Shema. He does quote the Zichru Teres Moshe, one of the Deli HaPoiskim, Linyan Dibor, Vade Misha Yochel Lizor Shlo Yadabach HaKrishma, Toiv L'Kayim, Divrei Kolboy. Avaroi bnei adam ein lashgiach klal achumra zu. Befrat im shayol noisei mutar lanois. You're allowed to talk after Hamapil. I feel about nefesh ein tzarich lizar b'zeh. I feel bein haprokim meishiv shalom l'chol adam. So basically, I found again a half a dozen poskim. You're allowed to say ashiyotza if you forgot to say it, or you have to go to the bathroom before you fell asleep. Krishma that you forgot to say when you daven early one night, you could say it after Hamapil. Sphira, Birchas Hamazayin, Bracha Achroin, whatever you forgot, Kiddush Levana, lightning and thunder. Rav was asked to Shaila after Hamapil. Wife picked up the phone. The Rav sleeping. He said Hamapil. No, could he answer? Look, the Beis Baruch. Yes, you could. The Ber Moshe has a Shaila where parents need the child for information. The child saying, So the Ber Moshe in Aleph Hamagimel, just keep it off the Raisa. Hakish can Chainik, talk. And I would add, if a baby's crying, folks are frightened, start saying, you're going to scare the baby much more. So talk, comfort the baby. And of course, Shalom Bayis is Doicha Shem Hashem even. The wife needs something, you're allowed to talk out. If a person's thirsty, he could drink. Someone asked me, could he learn and listen to a recorded of a shir until he falls asleep? So I told him, you're a young bach and you shouldn't have to do this. Go to sleep. He's going to get more and more nervous. But halach is not a problem. But one thing is clear. If a person woke up after and he fell asleep, he woke up and he's middle of the night and he wants to drink and eat and learn and then fall asleep again, once he slept even a little bit, there's no doubt about it that the bracha was chal. But basically we try to avoid talking. Someone told me his wife does not allow him to say Hamapil. So I said, we should say Hamapil, and if you have to talk. But basically don't give up this precious bracha. Guten Tag to you all. Yeah. Right after Kaddish. Who wants to leave? Who is saying? Let's say Kaddish?
Shema Irgin Shir Taylor, like Rabbi Yashakayach or Smith, for today's shir, like Rabbi Yashakayach, the sponsors of today's shir, Rabbi Ramot Rashtayaman, Lili Nishmas Over, Rabbi Yitzhak Yudah Ben Yisrael, Rabbi Shalom Yirsai tonight Tesel, and Rabbi Parnas, Lili Nishmas Over, Rabbi Avram, Zev Ben Rabbi Socher, Rabbi Shalom Yirsai Yud Gimel, Tainish Musim Tzuris, B'tzara Chaim, to have the great schus. Our sponsor is shir called Irgin Shir Taylor, 718-851-8651, email ist@yeshivanet.com.
Whoever wants to leave, you could leave, please. I'm going to say just a secret for those that want.
I'm supposed to say a secret of today's shir right now before the Olam falls asleep.
But they could leave. Whoever wants to leave, will leave. Just to review what we learned today. I don't want to keep the Olam, but whoever wants to leave, please leave. We saw the Hamapil is a very special bracha. It's a Birchas Hanenan, Shevach Vayda, on the wonderful, important sleep that we have. And basically, unless your minhag is not to say it, don't give it up and cherish it and use it properly. Basically, the chiyuv is a unique chiyuv. It's not just a nenin, it's also a minhag shel olam on a night's sleep. Not by day, even though that's a full sleep. Even on a small amount requires and justifies Hamapil. A nap at night, which you're going to just nap and then learn a few hours and go to sleep later, the nap is not required Birchas Hamapil, because even though a few minutes sleep is enough for a chiyuv, it has to be the night sleep. Basically, it's like a Birchas Hashachar once a night, and that's it. The kavanah that we have is really three parts: the nanin, the Birchas of Haidah, and look at the tefillahs. You'll see there are many precious tefillahs that we should also be thinking about. Even if a person is afraid he won't fall asleep, let him say the Hamapil and don't worry, and then you'll fall asleep. The problem is you get all wound up and look at the clock, and that makes it aggravating. It. Say the Hamapil and forget about the Hamapil, forget about falling asleep. The main benefit of sleep is laying in bed. If a person is not going to sleep at all that night, even though minhag Yisrael might require it, but the minhag is not to say Hamapil, because it's a Lashon Yachid and it's not true, I'm not going to sleep. When a person sleeps in the sukkah, he says Hamapil, but no special bracha of Lishon basukah. Hamapil fell asleep and woke up and going to sleep a second time, that's no second Hamapil. It's once per night. The morning is after Alot Hashachar. The person will not sleep at least a few minutes before Alot. He should not say Hamapil. If he will sleep a little bit before Alot, then you could say Hamapil, even though the bulk of the sleeping goes into the day. A night shift person or Shavuos morning that will not sleep at all at night, even if he's sleeping many hours by day, will not say Hamapil. Maybe B'Shem Malchus you could, or Behira, but no bracha B'Shem Malchus. A person could cannot say it by day, even though the bulk of the sleep goes into the night, like 8:15, 8:30 is not the time to say Hamapil. In England, where Chatzos and Alois is almost the same, no, maybe minhag in English to go sleep after Chatzos, then you could say it. Rav Sternbach says the Me'ah Bracha starts Hamapil, a very interesting point, because the day of a Yid starts with his Hamapil. That's where you start with the new day. A cotton before night should not say Hamapil l'chayra. After Chatzos, the minhag is to say it, unless you're makubal. Some never say it. Women should say it, even the Shei Svarad. A flight, bus, car, traveling at night. This is your night sleep, not a din in pajamas or bed. It's a din in hopeful a night's sleep, even if it's a short amount. Saying in a different room or even different building, there's no din of shini makayim. Standing or sitting, the ik is aim of a yira. Hamapil is said on Pesach, on Tisha B'Av, and even by an oinen. Lechatchila, try not to be mafsik, but anything of an adam lechaveri or bin adam makayim could be done after Hamapil. Go ahead for you. You don't have a break.
Shame, I'd like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful share. Rabbi said the share tomorrow will be here Yet Hashem 1 o'clock. Rabbi Avram Chaim Steinvos will speak tomorrow here 1 o'clock, and the shir of the whole week Yet Hashem. Shkoyach, Abcham Hashem, let's go to Zagi, so we can hear them to mitzvahs. Shenem Amen Chovas Man Sitka, Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh Kaddish.
Yizgalem Skalesh Meiravo, V'Yamod Yivrober Zevi, Yamod Mahuzari Yatzmach, V'Yamod Yivrober Mishichay. Ay, Chaynu V'Yam Chaynu V'Chaynu V'Chavayis Yisrael, V'Akolo V'Zman Korev, V'Yamod Yivrober Yamod Erel Me'el Mayo, Yizbarach V'Shtavar V'Yisbar V'Yisrael V'Yisnasar V'Yisador V'Yisalem V'Yisalol, Shmeim Kedishon V'Yecheh.